The unintelligible thought processes of the people who are standing on the top of buildings and shouting, "Follow the science," is killing me over here because they're the very same people who are not following the science. And today we're going to talk about this from a couple different levels. There's a new study out on antibodies, and of course there's a new study out talking about natural immunity versus getting the shot. So let's break all of this down. But before we do, I'm Dr. Nick Zarowski, and welcome to the channel. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification. You can get all my natural health videos at www.drz.tv. Let's dive into this. Antibodies persist for more than a year after the COVID-19 infection is what this new study finds. And this is really interesting because we have heard again and again that your antibodies just aren't there to protect you. In fact, recently there's been many articles that have been written where Dr. Fauci has said, I wouldn't even bother taking an antibody test because it would be a waste of time. Now, this article goes on to say the immune system of a vast majority of people who have been infected with the virus will continue to carry antibodies against the virus for at least 12 months, according to a peer-reviewed study accepted by the European Journal of Immunology on September 24th. Scientists at the Finnish Institute of Health and Welfare studied the presence of antibodies in 1,292 subjects 8 months after infection. They found that 96% of the subjects still carried neutralizing antibodies and 66% still carried a type of antibody called a nucleoprotein IgG, meaning that these antibodies will in fact protect them. We'll talk about natural immunity in just a second and how there's one study that showed that it is incredibly powerful. Hate to break it to all the naysayers out there, but if you're going to follow the science, you better understand that natural immunity works, and it works very well, and it's very strong. Now, the idea that antibodies just don't hold up over time is silly because we have many people who have been tested years and years after getting a virus and they still carry antibodies. You could take the 1918 flu pandemic, for instance, and they tested subjects who were 80, 90 years of age and they still had the antibodies to fight it off. This means that if their body came in contact with this virus again, the immune system would know exactly what to do and it would basically rival the troops to go and fight off that virus quickly. Let's go back to the article. The scientists then investigated antibody levels 1 year after infection by randomly selecting 367 subjects from the original cohort who hadn't yet been vaccinated. 89% of the subjects still carried neutralizing antibodies and 36% still carried the IgG antibody. Antibody levels were higher in subjects who had experienced severe COVID-19 disease compared to those who had mild disease. These subjects had 2 to 7 times as many antibodies for at least 13 months after infection. We'll talk about this a little bit more because that's actually an interesting topic where they found that people who basically got real severe COVID, they had a stronger antibody response, so therefore their antibodies were higher later on down the road. Studies of individuals who have recovered from the virus infection are crucial in determining for how long antibodies persist after infection and whether these antibodies protect against reinfection, the scientists wrote. Despite lasting protection against the original strain of the virus, the study found that neutralizing efficiency against the alpha, beta, and delta variant waned over time. The reduction in efficiency was considerably declined for the beta variant and was only slightly reduced against the alpha variant. For the delta variant, which is the dominant strain in the United States, they found that 80% of the subjects still had immune protection 12 months after. Now that's pretty interesting though, because a lot of antibodies are going to wane over time. The idea that you're just going to stay on like super high alert with your antibodies is really not true in most cases. So as we look at this and we see, oh, the antibodies wane, oh my gosh, this certainly means that you're not going to be protected. That would also be a false ideology. That's not true. I mean, it really, I mean, as we kind of go down the road, we'll learn more. But the big thing that I have a problem with is that there's pretty much most media coverage, and anybody who is getting their name on any sort of media, as far as a physician, they're stating that, or even doctors that are very political, they're stating that, oh, antibodies, they aren't going to protect you. Well, why are you stating that? If you're claiming that you don't know if the antibodies will protect you, don't just take the side that they won't. Take the side that they may, maybe, or maybe that you just don't know, because we were told for many months that the antibodies won't last. I mean, I remember hearing, oh, 4 months, oh, maybe 6 months or less. Well, now we have a study stating, well, they'll last a year. So a study published in Nature Medicine in May found that the levels of neutralizing antibodies in a person are highly predictive of immune protection against infection and severe disease caused by the virus, commonly known as the novel coronavirus. Prior studies have shown that antibodies persist 6 to 12 months after infection. So basically, we keep getting more studies. As we have more time to look at it, we keep getting more studies. Oh, hey, the antibodies keep lasting. They keep lasting. But once again, I keep going back to, why do we keep assuming that they will not last? We have to look at other viruses and look at what's happened with them, and we can probably get a decent amount of data off of that. Despite the robust and lasting protection after an infection, the virus vaccine mandates in the United States offer no exemption based on acquired immunity because they are not following the science. An Epoch Times review of the vaccine mandates for the U.S. colleges and universities didn't find a single school offering an exemption to students who had acquired immunity. Recent mandates imposed on the state and federal level have likewise ignored the acquired immunity. Now, this is obviously 100% not following to the science to ignore acquired immunity, okay? And this is because the natural immunity works. There's a study right here we're going to look at. I'm going to go back to the conclusion, but I'll read the title here. Comparing SARS-CoV-2 natural immunity to vaccine-induced immunity, reinfection versus breakthrough infections. Okay, so what they're looking at is, well, let's look at the natural immunity versus those who got COVID, and let's see what happens to them, okay? Are they getting reoccurring infections after that with COVID? This is something that is wildly important to know for a nation who's trying to basically stomp this out. And we see countries all over the world, let's say Australia, for instance, who are basically saying, look, you don't have rights here if you haven't got the shot. Well, why would you say that? Because if you're following the science, you would know that the natural infection is far more resistant to reinfection and also hospitalization. Let's look at the conclusion in this study. This study demonstrates that natural immunity confers longer lasting and stronger protection against infection, symptomatic disease, and hospitalization caused by the Delta variant SARS-CoV-2 compared to the two-dose vaccine-induced immunity. Now, here's the thing that's obviously wildly silly, is there's all these people saying, well, natural immunity doesn't really, have a place here, it doesn't work. Well, that's so wildly ignorant to say, because if natural immunity didn't work, then the actual vaccine wouldn't work. You have to have natural immunity. You have to have the ability to have natural immunity and a working immune system for the vaccine to even work. If you just pumped a vaccine into somebody who didn't have an immune system, it wouldn't do them a whole lot of good. You are looking for that immune response, that same type of immune response that you get with natural immunity. Now, individuals, according to the study, who were both previously infected with SARS-CoV-2 and given a single dose of the vaccine gained additional protection against the Delta variant. So basically what they're saying is, if you got natural immunity and you got one dose of the vaccine, you became like super resistant. Like you were really, really just built at that point to fight off anything that came at you. And if we looked at that previous article, it said, well, those people who were infected and they got really sick, they built a higher amount of antibodies. So basically, let's say if you got COVID light in a light manner, okay, you weren't very sick from it, and then you got one dose of this, it made you robustly able to fight off the virus if you got it again. So this is an honest conversation. I mean, this is something that you have to take into consideration. And I mean, everybody should be responsible for their own health decisions. I am a firm believer in that. I don't believe in all the nonsense that is how this is being politicized and how things are being forced. I mean, if you want people to not trust the system, keep keep up with what you're doing. That's what I would say to the politicians, because you're ignoring half the science out there. You're simply looking at the science that you want to look at. Is this science that you're looking at for, advancement of the biomedical system? Is this science that you are only considering all because of profit motives? What is it? Because most of the science, or a good half of the science, the other half of the conversation, they aren't even taking into consideration. Many countries around the world, and also here in the United States, where they continue to push corporations and states and all types of workplaces to not allow people to participate in work anymore if they don't have it. Well, why is there not a natural immunity card that you're giving to people? I mean, that would make sense, because we know that they have protection. Why is it that even though the studies show that you are protected with natural immunity, why is it that you're not willing to accept that unless somebody got the shot? That makes no sense at all. That makes no sense. Put in the comments what you think about this. Let's have a conversation down below. And if you're looking for ways to naturally boost your immune system, I'll put a whole bunch of different vitamins that work very well to do this down in the description. Also, if you like this video, share it with your friend, and I really think you'll like this video next.